At the airport, my sister slapped me in front of all the passengers before our trip to Hawaii. My parents instantly blamed me. She's always been their favorite. What they didn't know was that I paid for the entire trip, so I quietly canceled their tickets and walked away. What happened next shocked everyone. You know that feeling when your entire world just shatters? Like a carefully built sandcastle finally hit by a rogue wave? That was me, standing at gate A12, 5 boarding passes heavy in my hand. My sister, Amanda, had just slapped me, hard, in the middle of a packed airport terminal, screaming that I'd ruined everything. And my parents? Instead of defending me, they looked me dead in the eye and called me selfish. My cheek burned, the sound of the slap still echoing in the sudden silence of the terminal. Every single person was staring. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. Something quiet. Something cold. I just walked to the ticket counter, calm as you please, and canceled 4 of those tickets. I kept only mine. I watched, a single boarding pass in my hand, as my family boarded the Hawaiian Airlines flight to Honolulu without me. My phone buzzed, relentless, but I ignored it. I needed to breathe. I needed to figure out how in the world I'd let my life get to this point. Just 3 months earlier, I was buzzing. My annual bonus had just hit, and as a 32-year-old software engineer, it was a good one. Scrolling through my banking app in my Fremont apartment, all I could think about was my parents, Roger and Linda. 35 years of marriage. They'd worked so hard, raising Amanda and me in a small house in Tacoma, giving us everything they could. My dad, a mechanic, my mom, a school secretary. They deserved something truly special. That night, I dove deep into Hawaii trips. Resorts, reviews, costs. I wanted it to be perfect. Premium economy seats on Hawaiian Airlines, a beautiful ocean view suite in Maui, a rental car, amazing dinners, snorkeling, a sunset cruise. I meticulously planned every single detail. See, growing up, I'd always been the responsible one. While Amanda floated through high school, dreaming big but doing little, I was head down, grinding. Scholarships, 2 jobs, University of Washington, computer science degree, good job right out of the gate. Amanda? She enrolled in community college twice, dropped out twice, and my parents paid for it both times. She was 28 and still living at home, rent-free. The pattern was always there, really. I just chose not to see it. When Amanda needed a car down payment, I lent her $3,000. Never saw it again. When her photography business failed in 6 months, I'd already sunk another $2,000 into equipment. Again, never repaid. My parents always praised me for being such a good brother, but they never, ever asked Amanda to take responsibility. Still, I booked that Hawaii trip. I honestly thought this grand gesture, this massive gift, would finally make my parents see me. That I was valuable beyond just being the stable, reliable one who always fixed problems and handed out money. I picked May, great weather, fewer crowds. I even booked a 2-bedroom suite so Roger and Linda could have privacy, while Amanda and I would each have our own beds in the second room. Everything was thought out. 2 weeks before the trip, I unveiled it all at Sunday dinner. I handed them printed itineraries in fancy folders. My mom cried and hugged me tight. My dad shook my hand, his grip firm, told me he was proud. Amanda, though? She just frowned, flipping through the pages. "Why didn't you book first class?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. I explained that premium economy was super comfortable and first class would have been another $4,000. Money I thought was better spent on amazing activities and dinners. She just rolled her eyes and called me cheap. My mom laughed it off. "Oh, that's just Amanda." My dad tried to mediate, saying the seats would be fine. But Amanda wouldn't let it go. Over the next 2 weeks, it was nonstop. Texts asking if it was too late to upgrade. Calls at work complaining about how her friends always flew first class to Hawaii. Social media posts about her upcoming trip, lamenting how she wished the flights were nicer. I mostly ignored it. I was used to her demands, her entitlement, her uncanny ability to make everything about herself. What I wasn't ready for was the airport meltdown. We all met at departures at 5:30 a.m. Flight at 7:15. I had all the boarding passes ready, digital and paper. As we checked luggage, Amanda started again. She'd apparently looked up the plane's configuration, fixated on the lie-flat first-class seats. She loudly announced to the baggage handler that her brother was too cheap to upgrade his own family. My mom shushed her. My dad said to be grateful. But Amanda just spiraled. Through security, she kept up the barrage of comments. By the time we reached the gate, she was in a full-blown rage. She accused me of deliberately humiliating the family, saying I always did things halfway, never committed fully. And that's when it happened. She slapped me. Right there. In front of everyone. The smack was so loud, conversations died. Parents clutched their kids. Business travelers looked up from their screens. A gate agent started walking toward us. My face stung, and I felt a rush of heat. Not just from the slap, but from the searing humiliation. I waited. I waited for my parents to step in, to tell Amanda she'd crossed a line. But instead, my mom said I should have discussed the seating arrangements. My dad said I needed to be more considerate of what people wanted. Amanda stood there, arms crossed, a look of triumph on her face. Something inside me snapped. Not in an explosive, angry way, but quietly. Clearly, I turned, walked to the ticket counter. The agent, a kind woman in her 50s, asked if I was okay. I told her I needed to make changes. She pulled up my confirmation. Cancel 4 of the 5 tickets, I told her. Keep only mine. She looked confused, asked if I was sure. Never been more sure of anything, I said. She processed the cancellation. The tickets were non-refundable, but the airline gave me $12,000 in flight credits. Just like that. She handed me a new boarding pass for 1 passenger. I thanked her and walked back to the gate. My family was already in line to board, completely oblivious to my absence. I found a chair far away, sat down, and watched them. My phone started ringing. My mother, my father, Amanda. I let them all go to voicemail. Over the airport PA system, a calm voice announced that 4 passengers had been removed from Flight 447 due to ticketing issues. I watched as a gate agent pulled my parents and Amanda aside. Confusion morphed into shock, then pure, unadulterated anger. My mom started gesticulating wildly. Amanda was shouting, though I couldn't hear the words from where I sat. My phone exploded with notifications. Texts. Calls. 7 new voicemails. I played the first one. My mother's voice, shrill and furious, screaming that I was cruel, vindictive, that I'd ruined everything, that she couldn't believe I would do this to my own family. The second was Amanda, venom dripping from every word, calling me names I won't repeat, threatening to make me pay. The third was my father. His voice was cold, measured, deeply disappointed. He said he expected better, that this was childish and petty, that I'd embarrassed them in public. Not one of them asked why I did it. Not one acknowledged the slap. Not one mentioned their immediate defense of Amanda. Not one apology. I deleted the voicemails. I blocked their numbers, just for the day. I needed peace. My boarding group was called. I stood up, backpack slung over my shoulder, and walked to the line. As I handed over my boarding pass, I glanced back. My family was still at the counter, arguing. My mother was crying. Amanda was yelling. My father had his head in his hands. I boarded the plane, found my premium economy seat with the extra legroom, and sat by the window. As we pushed back from the gate, I looked out at the Seattle skyline. And for the first time in 32 years, a heavy, invisible weight began to lift. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my family would ever forgive me. But I had chosen myself, and it felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The 5.5-hour flight to Honolulu was mostly spent staring out the window, watching the endless ocean. The flight attendants were kind. One even noticed I was alone in seats clearly meant for a group, asked if I was okay. I told her I was better than okay. She smiled knowingly and brought me extra snacks. In Honolulu, the warm Hawaiian air hit me. I picked up the rental car, took a short inter-island flight, got another rental, and drove the scenic route to Maui. By early evening, I was checking into the resort. The woman at the front desk frowned slightly. "Will the rest of your party be arriving later?" she asked. "Just me," I told her. She nodded professionally, handed me 2 key cards for the Ocean View suite. The room was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows, king bed, separate living area, soaking tub. It was meant for a family celebration. Now it was just mine. That first night was lonely. I ordered room service, ate on the balcony, watched the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. I thought about calling my family, unblocking them, trying to explain. But each time I reached for my phone, I remembered my mother's face at the airport, not concerned for me, but angry at me. I put the phone down. The next morning, I was at the resort pool before 7 a.m. Only a few people were there. I found a lounge chair, ordered coffee, tried to read. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying the airport, the slap, the accusations, the cancellation, the looks on their faces. Then I noticed her. A woman about my age, maybe 30. Dark hair, ponytail, simple blue swimsuit. She looked as lost in thought as I felt. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, sympathetic smile. I smiled back. An hour later, as she walked past my chair to leave, she paused. "Rough vacation?" she asked. I must have looked utterly miserable. I laughed, a raw, honest sound. "Something like that," I said. She introduced herself as Sarah, a marine biologist from Portland, in Maui for a conference and staying a few extra days alone. We talked for 3 hours that morning. By the pool, over breakfast, walking along the beach. There was something so easy about talking to a stranger, someone with no history, no expectations, no preconceived notions. I told her everything about the airport incident. She listened, completely without judgment. Her perspective shifted something in me. She helped me see that the airport wasn't just an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 32 years of patterns. Being the responsible one, being the giver, being taken for granted, always trying to earn love that should have been freely given. On the third day, Sarah and I went snorkeling at Molokini Crater. The water was crystal clear, and we saw fish in colors I didn't even know existed. Underwater, everything was quiet, peaceful. For a few hours, I completely forgot about my family. On the boat ride back, my phone regained signal. It had been off for most of the trip. When I turned it on, I saw an email from an unfamiliar address. Patricia Caldwell, my aunt, my father's older sister in Boston. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Patricia had seen Amanda's social media posts. My sister had apparently been busy painting herself as the ultimate victim. Long paragraphs about her terrible brother who abandoned the family, ruined their dream vacation, who was selfish and cruel. Patricia said she knew me, that I wasn't that person, and she wanted my side of the story. But that wasn't the part that made my hands shake. The second half of the email contained screenshots. Screenshots of a family group chat I had never been part of. A chat with my parents, Amanda, Patricia, my uncle David, Aunt Helen, and several cousins. Messages going back years. In these screenshots, my parents were telling the extended family that I was the financial burden, that they constantly had to bail me out, that Amanda was the successful, independent one with a thriving marketing career. Message after message, year after year, painting a completely false picture of our lives. There were messages from 2 years ago, right around the time I'd actually lent my parents $8,000 when my dad lost his job. In the family chat, they told everyone I had borrowed money from them for a failed business venture. They talked about Amanda's supposed career successes, with fabricated details about clients and projects. The truth? She'd been unemployed for most of the past 5 years. Patricia's email ended with an apology. She was sorry for believing the lies, wanted to hear my truth, and suspected other family members had been misled. She included her phone number. I sat on that boat in shock. The sun beat down, ocean spray misted my face. Sarah noticed my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. I handed her my phone. She read the email, her eyes widening. "Wow," she said. "Just one word." We didn't talk much on the drive back. I needed to process. This wasn't just about the airport or the Hawaii trip. This was about years of systematic lying. My parents had constructed an alternate reality for the extended family, one where I was the problem and Amanda was the golden child. And I had no idea. That night, I sat on my balcony, phone and laptop spread out. Old texts, old emails, photos. I started building a timeline. Sarah sat with me, helping me organize it all, offering perspective when I got too emotional. I found text exchanges with my mother from 2 years ago, when I lent them that $8,000. She'd been so grateful, promised to pay me back. They never did. But in the family chat, I was the one in debt to them. I pulled up my bank statements. 12 years of transactions. Thousands of dollars to Amanda, thousands to my parents. Money for emergencies that weren't really emergencies. Money for opportunities that never materialized. Money that was never repaid. Over $40,000. Gone. Then I found Amanda's Venmo. It was public. Transaction after transaction from my parents. $50 here, $200 there, $500 for rent, $300 for car insurance, all while she claimed to be independent and self-sufficient. On the fifth day, I called Patricia. We talked for 3 hours. She filled in more gaps. She told me about family gatherings I'd skipped, where my parents would tell completely untrue stories about me, making me sound irresponsible, flaky, always needing help. Meanwhile, Amanda was ambitious and driven. Patricia always felt something was off, but she had no reason to doubt her brother until Amanda's social media meltdown after the airport. That's what made her question the narrative. She started asking other family members. The stories didn't add up, so she reached out. Then Patricia told me something that made my blood run cold. My grandmother, my father's mother, had passed away 8 years ago. In her will, she left an inheritance, $50,000 each, to me and Amanda. My parents were the executors. They told me my share had been used for my college expenses, that grandma wanted it that way. I believed them. I was 24, just starting my career, and I trusted them completely. Patricia still had copies of the actual will and bank transfer records. Grandma's instructions were crystal clear. The money was to go directly to us when we each turned 25. No strings attached. It wasn't for college or anything else. It was to help us start our adult lives. Patricia sent me the documents. I opened them on my laptop. There it was, in black and white. $50,000 transferred to an account in my name that I never knew existed. And then, 3 months later, $50,000 transferred out to pay off Amanda's credit card debt and buy her a used Honda Accord. My parents had forged my signature on the transfer authorization. I never saw a penny of my inheritance. I could barely breathe. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I wasn't okay. This wasn't just favoritism. This was fraud. This was theft. This was calculated, deliberate, criminal. I spent the rest of the evening digging deeper. I found an old email folder, one I hadn't looked at in years. Buried in hundreds of messages was one forwarded to me by accident from 4 years ago. Subject: Elton's situation. A thread between my parents and Amanda. They were discussing how to get me to pay for Amanda's latest failed business idea, a boutique clothing store. The language was chilling, strategic, calculating. My mother wrote about how I was a people pleaser, how guilt would motivate me, how they just needed to frame it right. My father added that they had raised me to prioritize family, so I wouldn't say no. Amanda's response was the worst. "He's so desperate for your approval. This will be easy. Just make him feel like a hero, and he'll hand over the money." The email was dated 3 days after a family dinner where they'd made me feel so special for agreeing to help Amanda with her business plan. I'd given her $5,000 for that store. It closed within 4 months. I sat there, in that beautiful Hawaiian resort room, looking at evidence of years of manipulation, and I felt something break inside me. Not my spirit, my illusions, the fantasy that my family loved me, the belief that I mattered to them beyond what I could provide. It all shattered. Sarah didn't try to comfort me with empty words. She just sat with me. Eventually, she said, "What do you want to do?" I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew I couldn't go back. That version of Elton, the one who accepted crumbs and called it love, was gone. I could barely sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those emails, my mother's words, my father's calculations, Amanda's contempt. By sunrise, I was back on the balcony with my laptop, going through everything again, making sure I hadn't misunderstood. Sarah knocked on my door at 7 a.m. with coffee and bagels. She'd given me space, but now she was here, ready to help. We spread everything out on the coffee table: bank statements, email printouts, screenshots of the family chat, the will documents, transfer records. It looked like a detective's evidence board. Sarah asked me to walk her through the timeline, chronologically. So I did, starting 12 years ago, when I was 20 and lent Amanda my first $1,000. Tracking every loan, every gift, every time I helped with rent, car payments, insurance, business ventures. Then cross-referencing what my parents told the family versus what actually happened. The pattern was unmistakable. Every time I helped someone financially, my parents would spin it in the family chat as them helping me. When I paid for my father's dental work, they told the family I'd borrowed money from them for my own medical emergency. When I covered 3 months of Amanda's rent, they said she'd lent me money to cover my bills. The truth was inverted. Consistently, deliberately. Sarah, with her scientist's mind, started creating a spreadsheet. Column 1, What actually happened? Column 2. What my parents told the family. Column 3. Financial impact on me. Column 4. Documentation/proof. By mid-morning, we had a comprehensive record of deception spanning over a decade. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang. It was Patricia. She'd been talking to my uncle David, my father's younger brother, who lived in Denver. David wanted to talk to me. He had his own suspicions. Patricia gave me his number. I called David immediately. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was warm, but serious. He told me he'd stopped coming to family gatherings 5 years ago because of how my parents treated me. Watching them constantly criticize me while praising Amanda for doing nothing made him uncomfortable. He tried to say something once, and my father had cut him out for 6 months. So, David kept his distance. He always knew I was the responsible, successful one. But my parents' narrative was so consistent, he sometimes doubted his own perceptions. Now, with Patricia's information, everything clicked. David said he had records, too. My parents had borrowed money from him 3 years ago, claiming it was for my car accident expenses. I had never been in a car accident. He lent them $4,000, which they never repaid. We talked for over an hour. David said he'd support me however I needed. He also mentioned that our Aunt Helen in Florida had been asking questions. She'd apparently lent my parents money, too, under false pretenses about me. The web of lies was far more extensive than I had imagined. After the call, I felt overwhelmed. Sarah suggested we get out, clear our heads. We drove up to Haleakala National Park to watch the sunset from the summit. The drive took us above the clouds. At 10,000 feet, we stood looking out over the crater as the sun painted the sky in impossible colors. Sarah said something I'll never forget. The truth is like this view. It was always here, always real. You just had to get high enough to see it clearly. She was right. The manipulation had been happening my entire adult life. I just hadn't had the perspective to recognize it. On the drive back down, my phone regained signal. Several missed calls from unknown numbers, and one voicemail from my mother, whose number I'd unblocked that morning. I played it on speaker for Sarah. My mother's voice wasn't apologetic. It was angry. She said I was embarrassing the family on social media. I hadn't posted anything. I checked my accounts. Nothing. Then I checked Amanda's Instagram. She'd posted a long rant about me, calling me toxic, accusing me of abandoning the family, painting herself as the victim. Dozens of extended family members had commented. Some supported her, others were asking questions. Then I saw a tag. My cousin Jennifer, a lawyer in Chicago. She'd posted a simple message. Before you judge someone, make sure you have the full story. Families are complicated, and social media is not the place for truth. Several people had liked it. My cousin Matthew, a teacher in Austin, commented, agreed. There are always two sides. I realized the family was splitting. Some believed Amanda. Others were starting to question. And my mother was panicking because the narrative was slipping out of her control. I didn't respond to the voicemail. Instead, I made a decision. I posted something on my own social media for the first time in months. Just a simple message. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is distance from people who diminish you. Hawaii taught me that. Grateful for new perspectives. I included a photo Sarah had taken of me at the Haleakala summit, the sunset behind me, a genuine smile on my face. That night, back at the resort, 3 calls from my parents' number. I didn't answer. They left voicemails. My mother, still angry, demanding I take down my post. My father, telling me I was making things worse. And Amanda, calling from their house, screaming into the phone. I listened to Amanda's voicemail on speaker. She was furious that I was trying to turn the family against her. She called me a liar, a manipulator. Said I deserved that slap and worse. She threatened to make sure everyone knew what kind of person I really was. Not once did she acknowledge anything she'd done. Not once did she consider that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong. Within 2 hours, my post had over 100 likes and dozens of comments. Extended family members I hadn't heard from in years were reaching out. Jennifer called me directly. She'd been suspicious of my parents' stories for a long time. As a family lawyer, she'd seen too many cases of financial manipulation to ignore the red flags. She asked if I needed legal representation. I told her I just might. On my last day in Maui, I sat on the beach with my laptop and composed an email. I sent it to Patricia, David, Jennifer, and Matthew. In it, I laid out everything. The loans never repaid, the stolen inheritance, the lies told to the family, the manipulation. I attached documentation for everything: bank statements, emails, transfer records, screenshots. I told them I wasn't asking them to take sides. I was simply asking them to know the truth. Within hours, the responses poured in. Patricia was heartbroken and furious. David wasn't surprised, but was still angry. Jennifer said I had grounds for legal action and again offered to help. Matthew said he had his own stories about my parents badmouthing him when he set boundaries. The support was overwhelming and unexpected, but I also got messages from family members who sided with my parents. Two aunts, financially dependent on my parents, sent angry messages saying I was destroying the family. A cousin I barely knew accused me of being vindictive. The family was fracturing along lines of truth and loyalty, and it was painful to watch. Sarah and I had our last dinner in Maui at a small restaurant overlooking the ocean. She was flying back to Portland. I was heading to Seattle. We'd known each other for only a week, but it felt like much longer. She had been a lifeline. She asked what I was going to do when I got home. I told her I didn't know. Part of me wanted to pursue legal action, get my inheritance back. Part of me just wanted to walk away from them forever. Part of me still hoped for reconciliation, though I knew that was probably a fantasy. Sarah said something wise. You don't have to decide everything right now. Take your time. Process. Heal. The truth is out there now. Let it do its work. We exchanged numbers. I meant it when I said I'd stay in touch. She had shown me what healthy boundaries looked like, what it meant to choose yourself. The flight back to Seattle felt different. I wasn't running away anymore. I was heading towards something, though I wasn't sure what. As the plane descended over Puget Sound, I looked out at the city lights. Somewhere down there were my parents, angry, defensive. Somewhere was Amanda, probably planning her next move. And somewhere down there was the rest of my life, waiting for me to claim it. I had gone to Hawaii to celebrate family. What I got instead was clarity. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more. I didn't go back to my apartment. I went straight to my friend Marcus's place in Ballard. We'd been college roommates. He was one of my oldest, most trusted friends. I texted him from the airport, and he told me his guest room was mine for as long as I needed it. Marcus opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "That bad, huh?" I gave him the short version while we ordered Thai food. His response was blunt and perfect. "Dude, your family is messed up. You should have done this years ago." Sometimes, you need a friend who tells you the truth without sugarcoating it. I spent the first few days back just decompressing. I went to work, kept my head down, avoided my apartment because my parents had a key and I knew they might show up. My phone continued to blow up with messages from family members on both sides of the growing divide. I responded to the supportive ones, ignored the hostile ones. A week later, Jennifer called. She'd reviewed all the documentation and consulted with a colleague specializing in estate law. She said I had a solid case for recovering my inheritance, plus interest. The statute of limitations hadn't run out on the fraud. If I wanted to pursue it legally, she would represent me pro bono. Family, she said, should not get away with stealing from family. I told her I'd think about it. Part of me wanted justice. Part of me just wanted peace. I wasn't sure I could handle a protracted legal battle with my own parents. Then, they forced my hand. 2 weeks after the airport incident, a Tuesday morning, I was in a meeting at work when security called my desk. My parents were in the lobby, demanding to see me. They'd shown up at my workplace, caused a scene, and refused to leave. My boss, Diane, always supportive, told me to take all the time I needed. I went down, heart pounding. My parents stood near the reception desk, looking angry and self-righteous. My mother's eyes were red, like she'd been crying. My father's jaw was clenched. I told them we couldn't talk there, suggested a coffee shop 2 blocks away, public, neutral. They agreed. We walked in tense silence. Once we were seated, with coffee none of us would drink, my father started. He said I'd embarrassed the family, that I was childish and petty, that I needed to apologize to Amanda and make things right. My mother added that I was tearing the family apart with my accusations. They both acted like I was the problem, like I'd done something unforgivable by canceling those tickets and exposing their truth. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I'd prepared. Inside were copies of everything: bank statements, email printouts, the will documents, transfer records with forged signatures. I placed the folder on the table between us. "Before we go any further," I said, my voice steady, "I need you to look at this." My father opened the folder. His face turned red as he flipped through the pages. My mother looked over his shoulder, her expression shifting from anger to something like fear. I calmly and clearly explained what I had discovered. The lies they'd told the extended family, the money they'd taken, the inheritance they'd stolen, the manipulation that had gone on for over a decade. I laid it all out, giving them a chance to explain, to apologize, to make it right. My father's response was not what I hoped for. He said I had no right to go digging through private family matters. He claimed the inheritance money went to family needs, and since I was part of the family, it all evened out. The loans I gave were gifts, not loans, because that's what family does. I asked him about the forged signature on, took her hand, and spoke to my father directly. I can live with it, I said, because Derek's problems are not my fault, and destroying my business will not solve them. All it will do is drag me down, too. Emma and I have worked too hard to build our life to throw it away on a crisis that Derek created. Derek finally spoke, his voice raw. Robert, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I treated you. And Emma, I'm sorry for being arrogant. I'm sorry for the mess I made, but I'm still your brother. Does that mean nothing? It means a lot, I said. It means I don't want to see you in prison. It means I hope you find a way through this. But it does not mean I am going to sacrifice everything I have to delay the inevitable. You are going to have to face this, Derek. You are going to have to accept responsibility and deal with the consequences. Emma squeezed my hand, and I knew she was with me no matter what came next. Then I guess that is your choice to make, I said quietly. I turned toward the door, Emma beside me. Behind us, my mother was crying. My father was shouting about betrayal and selfishness. Chloe was saying something vicious about Emma. Derek sat in silence, his head in his hands. We walked out of the house and got into our truck. As we drove away, Emma was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. But I know we did the right thing. We did, she said. Your family has spent years telling you that you weren't enough, that your choices were wrong. They can't turn around and demand your help when their choices fall apart. I drove us home in silence, my mind churning with emotions I couldn't quite name. When we got back to our house, Emma went to check on her chickens, and I walked to my workshop. I stood inside the building I had constructed with my own hands, surrounded by tools I had collected over years, looking at the half-finished dining table on my workbench. This was what I had built. This was real. This was mine. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. The week after that confrontation, I heard nothing from my family. No calls, no texts, not even angry voicemails. The silence was somehow worse than the fighting. I threw myself into work, spending long hours in the workshop, focusing on the precision of joints, the grain of wood. It was something I could control. Emma went about her routines with her usual calm determination. She tended her garden, collected eggs, continued her online coursework. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she checked her phone more often, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Saturday morning. My father called, his voice formal and cold. Your mother wants to talk to the whole family, he said. Tomorrow afternoon at 2. She expects you and Emma to be there. What is this about? I asked. Just be there, he said and hung up. Emma and I debated whether to go. Part of me wanted to refuse, to draw a line and stick to it. But Emma pointed out that we needed to know what was happening, that avoiding the situation wouldn't make it go away. So, we drove to my parents' house the next day, both of us tense, uncertain. When we arrived, Derek's car was already in the driveway. We walked in to find my parents, Derek, and Chloe all sitting in the living room. The atmosphere was thick with tension and resentment. My mother spoke first, her voice tight. I asked you here because we need to settle this situation once and for all. Derek's lawyers have worked out a settlement arrangement. He needs $275,000 by the end of the month. If he doesn't come up with it, he will face criminal charges and almost certainly go to prison. I said nothing, waiting for the demand I knew was coming. Your father and I have mortgaged this house, my mother continued. We have borrowed against everything we have left. We can contribute $90,000. That leaves $185,000 still needed. Derek looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. Robert, I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you. I've lost everything. Chloe and I are living in a studio apartment in a building with broken elevators. I'm working at a grocery store to try to pay for groceries. My career is destroyed. I have nothing left except the chance to stay out of prison. Chloe was crying quietly. Please, she whispered. I know I was terrible to you and Emma. I know I said awful things. I'm sorry. We're just desperate. I felt Emma tense beside me. I kept my voice calm. I understand you are desperate. I understand this is serious. But nothing has changed about my situation. I cannot give you money I don't have without destroying my business. My father's face hardened. You have the workshop property. You could take out a loan against it. You could sell it if necessary. You are choosing not to help. I am choosing to protect what I built, I said. Just like you would choose to protect your house if someone asked you to give it away. We are mortgaging our house, my mother said, her voice rising. We are sacrificing everything to help Derek. Why will you not do the same? Because Derek is not my responsibility, I said. He is an adult who made his own choices. I am sorry those choices had consequences, but I did not create this situation. Chloe's tears dried up suddenly, and she looked at Emma with pure hatred. This is your fault, she spat. You are the one telling Robert to abandon his family. You are poisoning him against us because we weren't impressed by your little farm girl routine. Emma's voice was quiet but clear. I have not told Robert anything except to make his own choice. But since you brought it up, let me tell you what I think. I think your family has spent years measuring success by the wrong metrics. You valued appearances over substance, status over character. You taught Derek that taking risks with other people's money made him smart, that flashy displays of wealth meant he was winning. And now that those lessons have led to disaster, you want Robert to validate that approach by sacrificing himself to fix it. My mother stood up, shaking with anger. How dare you lecture us about values? Your family lives in the middle of nowhere playing farmer. You have no idea what it takes to succeed in the real world. This was the moment. I saw it in Emma's eyes. The decision to reveal the truth she had only hinted at before. She pulled out her phone, opened her photos to a specific document, then handed the phone to my mother. That is my family's most recent property tax assessment, Emma said calmly. The land my family owns is valued at just over $4 million. The agricultural business generates approximately $300,000 in annual revenue. I finished my MBA in agricultural business management last month. I have been managing my family's commercial leasing contracts for the past year, while also helping Robert with his business accounting and planning. My mother stared at the phone screen, her face going from red to white. She handed the phone to my father without a word. He looked at it, then looked at Emma as if he had never seen her before. You see, Emma continued, while you were all looking down on me for growing vegetables and raising chickens, I was building a career in sustainable agriculture and land management. While you were mocking my simple clothes and lack of interest in fashion, I was studying business strategy and financial planning. You assumed I was ignorant and unsophisticated because I chose to live close. The transfer authorization. He had no answer. I asked about telling the extended family I'd borrowed money from them when the opposite was true. He said I was taking things out of context. My mother tried a different approach. She started crying, saying she couldn't believe I would be so cruel to my own mother, that she had sacrificed everything for me. I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just clarity. Where was your concern? I asked, when Amanda slapped me in the airport. Silence. Where was your concern? I continued, when you stole $50,000 from me. More silence. I stood up. My father said, if you walk away now, you're walking away from this family forever. I looked him in the eye. No, I said, I'm walking away from people who hurt me and lie about it. If that's what family means to you, then I'm okay with leaving. I walked out. They didn't follow. I went back to my office, into the bathroom, and cried for 10 minutes. Not because I was sad, because I was free. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. It was Amanda's boyfriend, Kyle. I'd never met him, but Amanda had mentioned him. He said he needed to talk to me about something important. We met at a park near Green Lake the next day. Kyle turned out to be a decent guy, caught in a bad situation. He was 29, worked in construction, and seemed genuinely confused. He said Amanda had told him I was the problem, that I was jealous of her success, that our parents constantly had to bail me out. But then he saw my social media post. He saw the comments from extended family. He started asking Amanda questions, and her answers didn't add up. When he pressed her, she got defensive. When he asked for proof of her marketing career, she couldn't provide any. He was starting to realize he'd been lied to. I showed him the same folder I'd shown my parents. He read through everything carefully. When he finished, he looked sick. "She told me you were broke," he said, his voice flat. "She told me you lived off your parents. She told me she was paying their mortgage." I told him the truth. Amanda had never paid for anything. Our parents covered her expenses. I had been the one helping them. Kyle thanked me for being honest. He said he needed to think about his relationship with Amanda. We shook hands and parted ways. I felt bad for him. He was collateral damage. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Amanda had posted another long rant on social media about toxic family members and how she was the victim of a smear campaign. But this time, Kyle commented publicly. He wrote, "Funny how you told me your brother was broke and your parents supported him. The bank records tell a different story." Amanda deleted the post within minutes, but screenshots live forever. Several cousins had already captured it and were sharing it in the extended family group chat Patricia kept me updated on. The truth was spreading, and Amanda's credibility was crumbling. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at Marcus' apartment from an attorney representing my parents. They were threatening to sue me for defamation and emotional distress. The letter claimed I'd spread malicious lies, damaged their reputation, and caused them severe psychological harm. They demanded a public apology and $20,000 in damages. I read it twice, then called Jennifer. She read it over the phone and started laughing. "This is the stupidest legal threat I have ever seen," she said. "They are basically admitting the facts in their complaint. They're just claiming you shouldn't have told anyone." She offered to represent me, not just for defense, but for a counterclaim. She drafted a formal demand letter for the return of my inheritance, plus 12 years of interest, along with repayment of all documented loans. The letter included every piece of evidence we had. It also included a warning. If my parents proceeded with their defamation suit, I would countersue for fraud, theft, forgery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Jennifer filed the letter with a civil court and had it served to my parents. "We'll wait for their response," she said. "Either they drop their threat and negotiate, or we go to trial." She was confident we would win. I felt powerful in a way I never had before. Not powerful like I was hurting them. Powerful like I was standing up for myself. Like I mattered. Like I deserved justice. The next few weeks were tense. I moved back into my own apartment after changing the locks. I blocked my parents and Amanda on all platforms. I stayed in close contact with Patricia, David, and Jennifer. The extended family was fully split. About 14 relatives believed me and supported my pursuit of justice. About 4 remained loyal to my parents, mostly out of financial dependence or misplaced family loyalty. Then I got a call from a Florida number I didn't recognize. Aunt Helen, my father's youngest sister. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. When she calmed down, she told me she'd known about the manipulation for years but felt too guilty to say anything. Helen said she was present when my grandmother signed her will. She heard Grandma explicitly say the inheritance was for me and Amanda to use for our futures, not to be touched for anything else. She'd suspected something was wrong when my parents told me the money went to college expenses, but she'd convinced herself it was none of her business. Helen offered to testify if the case went to court. She also revealed something else. My parents had borrowed $15,000 from her 2 years ago, claiming it was for my medical emergency. They said I'd been in a serious car accident and needed surgery. They showed her fake hospital bills. She gave them the money. I had never been in an accident. I had never needed surgery. She still had copies of the fake bills. They had fabricated documents to commit fraud, not just against me, but against multiple family members. The depth of their deception was staggering. I thanked Helen for calling. She apologized over and over for not speaking up sooner. I told her I understood. Families are complicated. Loyalty runs deep. Sometimes it takes something dramatic to break through years of conditioning. With Helen's testimony and documentation, Jennifer said our case was ironclad. We had multiple witnesses, extensive paper trails, and evidence of systematic fraud. She filed an amended complaint, adding the medical emergency fraud to the list of charges. I waited for my parents to respond. I waited for them to realize they were cornered. I waited to see if they would finally acknowledge what they had done and try to make it right. But I wasn't holding my breath. My parents' attorney responded 3 days later. They requested a settlement meeting. Jennifer warned me it might be a tactic, but it might also mean they were ready to negotiate. We agreed to meet. The meeting was set for a Wednesday afternoon at a neutral attorney's office downtown. Jennifer and I arrived early. My parents and their attorney, Richard Peton, arrived exactly on time. We sat across from each other at a long conference table. My parents wouldn't make eye contact with me. Jennifer presented our case. The inheritance, the documented loans, the interest, the money taken from David and Helen under false pretenses. The total came to approximately $87,000. My father's face went pale. My mother looked like she might faint. Richard asked for a private conference with his clients. They left the room for 20 minutes. When they returned, Richard made a counteroffer. They would return the inheritance amount, $50,000, but claimed they didn't have records of the loans and couldn't verify that debt. They refused to pay interest, claiming the inheritance was held in trust for family needs. Jennifer reminded them that the forged signature and fabricated hospital bills suggested otherwise. She reminded them that fraud charges carried criminal implications. We went back and forth for 2 hours. Finally, they agreed to return the full inheritance amount of $50,000, plus repayment of $20,000 in documented loans, $70,000 total. They refused to admit wrongdoing in writing and refused to make any public apologies. Jennifer advised me that pushing for more would mean a trial that could take years and cost me emotionally, even if I won financially. I made a decision. I accepted the settlement. Not because I thought it was fair, but because I wanted to be done. I wanted my money back, and I wanted to move forward with my life. We signed the agreement that day. They had 30 days to make the payments. As we were packing up, my father finally looked at me. "You have destroyed this family," he said, his voice laced with venom. I looked back at him, my voice calm and clear. "No," I said. "I just stopped letting you destroy me." We left separately. I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in years. Jennifer hugged me, said she was proud. We went to a nearby bar and had a drink. She refused to let me pay for her legal work, saying justice was payment enough. I promised to take her to the nicest dinner in Seattle once the money came through. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding. Therapy, boundary setting, processing years of manipulation. I reconnected with the extended family who'd supported me. I made plans to visit Patricia in Boston, David in Denver. And I stayed in touch with Sarah. We talked on the phone twice a week, long conversations about everything and nothing. She was considering a job opportunity in Seattle with a marine research institute. We were taking things slow, but there was definitely something there. 28 days after the settlement, I received a wire transfer for $70,000. My parents had paid 1 day before the deadline. There was no note, no message, just the money. I stared at my bank account balance, feeling vindicated and sad at the same time. I called Patricia and told her. She cried happy tears. I called David and Jennifer and Marcus. They all celebrated with me. I posted one simple message on social media. Sometimes justice takes time, but it comes. Grateful for truth and the people who stand for it. Amanda didn't comment. My parents didn't respond. But I didn't need them to. I had what I needed. I had my money back. I had my dignity. I had my truth. A week later, I used part of the money to book a trip. I invited Patricia, David, Helen, and Jennifer to join me for a long weekend in Victoria, British Columbia. My treat. A genuine thank you for standing by me. We stayed at a beautiful hotel, ate amazing food, explored the city, and laughed together. Real family. The kind you choose, the kind that sees you and values you. On the last night, at dinner overlooking the water, Patricia raised her glass. "To Elton," she said, "who taught us all what courage looks like." We toasted. I felt seen in a way I had never felt with my parents. Patricia told me something that night I'll never forget. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you," she said. "She always said you had quiet strength. She knew you would need it someday." I asked what she meant. Patricia explained that Grandma had seen the favoritism, the way my parents treated Amanda differently, the way they took me for granted. That's why she made her inheritance instructions so specific. She wanted to make sure I had something that was just mine. Learning that my grandmother had seen me, had valued me, had tried to protect me even after her death, it broke something open in my heart. I cried right there at the dinner table. Not sad tears. Healing tears. Returning to Seattle after Victoria felt different. I wasn't the same person who had stood in that airport 3 months ago. I had been tested, betrayed, broken open. But I had also been supported, validated, and made whole in new ways. My parents didn't contact me after making the payment. Radio silence. Part of me wondered if they felt any remorse. Part of me knew they probably just felt humiliated that the truth had come out. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail. Not certified, not legal, just a regular envelope with my mother's handwriting. Inside was a handwritten note. It wasn't an apology. It was a plea. She wrote about how family is supposed to forgive, how I was destroying relationships that had taken decades to build, how I was hurting people who loved me. Some people believed them. My Aunt Carol, always close to my mother, sent a long email calling me heartless. My cousin Brian, who barely knew me, posted something on social media about how younger generations didn't understand family loyalty. It stung, even though I knew they didn't have the full story. But more people saw through it. Patricia and David were relentless in sharing the truth with anyone who would listen. Not to hurt my parents, but because they believed family members deserved to know the facts before choosing sides. My cousin Matthew, the teacher, shared his own story in the family group chat, talking about how my parents had criticized him for years, spread rumors when he set boundaries. His story validated mine, showing this pattern extended beyond just me. My cousin Jennifer, the lawyer, posted a carefully worded message on social media. She didn't name names, but she talked about financial abuse within families, how it often goes unrecognized, and linked to resources about elder abuse and inheritance theft. The post was shared hundreds of times. The family was fracturing along lines of truth and denial. It was painful to watch relationships I'd grown up with dissolve, but I also recognized that some of those relationships had never been real. They were based on a false narrative, on a version of me my parents had invented. Then Amanda made her move. She posted a long rant on Instagram, calling me toxic and abusive, claiming I'd always been jealous of her, manipulated our parents, stolen money from the family. She tagged me. Before I could even respond, Kyle, her ex-boyfriend, commented publicly. Interesting story, Amanda. Weird how it contradicts the bank records you refused to show me. Also, weird how your brother supposedly stole money when the settlement your parents just paid him proves otherwise. His comment got dozens of likes. Others started asking questions. Within an hour, she deleted the post, but the damage to her credibility was done. My mother's letter was manipulative, trying to guilt me. But it also revealed something important. They were panicking. The family they had controlled through fear and obligation was slipping away. People were asking questions they couldn't answer. I didn't respond to the letter. I had said everything I needed to say in that coffee shop and in that settlement meeting. The rest was up to them. A week later, Jennifer called. She'd received another letter from my parents' attorney. They were threatening to sue me again, this time for defamation based on things extended family members had said in the group chat. The letter claimed I'd orchestrated a smear campaign. Jennifer read it and laughed. This is even dumber than the first one, she said. They're threatening to sue you for things other people said. That's not how defamation works. She drafted a response, pointing out the obvious legal flaws and reminding them that truth is an absolute defense. She added that if they continued with frivolous legal threats, we would pursue sanctions and additional damages for harassment. They never followed through. It had been a bluff, a desperate attempt to scare me into silence. It didn't work. 3 weeks after the Instagram incident, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Amanda. My first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Her voice was different, quieter, less aggressive. She said she wanted to talk, just the two of us, no parents involved. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her for coffee. Public place, daytime. I told Jennifer and Marcus where I was going, just in case. Amanda looked different. Tired. Older. She'd lost weight. She ordered a latte, and we sat in uncomfortable silence for a minute before she spoke. She didn't apologize for the slap. She didn't apologize for the lies. What she said was, I don't know how to be in this family without being the favorite. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. She talked about how our parents had always praised her for nothing, how they never expected her to succeed because they didn't believe she could, how being the golden child was actually a cage, because it meant she never had to grow up, never had to face consequences, never had to become a real adult. You got out, she said. You built a life. I'm 28, and I have nothing. No career, no savings, no real relationships. Just our parents telling me I'm special while I fall apart. It was painful to hear, but it didn't change what she had done. I told her I appreciated her honesty, But that honesty without accountability was just confession without change. I told her that if she wanted to rebuild any kind of relationship with me, she needed to take responsibility for her actions. The slap, the lies, the manipulation, all of it. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I don't know how." And I realized she was telling the truth. Our parents had raised her to be dependent, to be entitled, to believe she deserved things without earning them. They had crippled her in a different way than they had crippled me. I told her I couldn't fix her. That was work she had to do herself. I suggested therapy. I told her about the resources that had helped me. She listened, but didn't commit. We finished our coffee and left. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement. And maybe that was a start, even if we never got further. That night, I talked to Sarah for 2 hours. She had accepted the job in Seattle and was moving in 3 weeks. We talked about what it would be like to actually date in the same city, to build something real. I told her about the meeting with Amanda. She said, "You can be compassionate without being responsible for her healing. Remember that." I was learning. Slowly. Painfully. But I was learning. 6 months passed. 6 months of therapy, boundary setting, rebuilding. 6 months of learning to recognize manipulation and walk away. 6 months of choosing peace over approval. My parents sent a Christmas card. A generic holiday greeting with their signatures and a printed family photo from years ago, back when we all still pretended everything was fine. No personal note, no acknowledgement of anything that had happened. Just a card, as if the past year had been erased. I looked at it for a long time, then put it in a drawer. I didn't respond, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. I had learned that some relationships cannot be salvaged, and trying only reopens wounds that need to stay closed. Sarah moved to Seattle in late September. We'd been dating long distance for months, but having her here changed everything. We took things slow, both of us aware of our complicated family histories, both committed to building something healthy. One Saturday in October, we drove up to the San Juan Islands. As we sat on the beach, watching the ferry cross the water, she asked me, "Do you regret how you handled everything with your family?" It was a question I'd asked myself 100 times. I thought about it carefully before answering. "I regret that it was necessary," I said. "I regret that my parents were the kind of people who would steal from their own son and lie about it for years. I regret that Amanda grew up believing she deserved everything without earning anything. I regret the family dinners we'll never have, the holidays that will never be whole again." I paused, looking out at the shimmering water. But do I regret standing up for myself? Do I regret demanding the truth? Do I regret choosing my own well-being over their comfort? No, I don't regret that at all. Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand. "That's growth," she said. In November, I got a message from Matthew, my cousin in Austin. He said he'd started seeing a therapist to work through his own family issues. He thanked me for giving him the courage to set boundaries with our parents. He said watching me stand up for myself had shown him it was possible. I realized then that my story had ripples far beyond just me. Other family members, who had been hurt or diminished, were finding their own voices. The truth I had spoken had given them permission to speak their truths, too. Jennifer helped me set up a scholarship fund, with a portion of the settlement money, in my grandmother's name at the University of Washington for students pursuing computer science. At the small launch event, I talked about my grandmother's quiet strength and her belief that education could change lives. I didn't mention my parents or the stolen inheritance. I didn't need to. The people who knew, knew. The scholarship would be her real legacy. Patricia called me on Thanksgiving. She said the family gathering that year was small. Just her, David, Helen, and a few cousins. My parents had hosted their own separate dinner with Amanda and the relatives who still sided with them. The family was permanently split. Patricia sounded sad about it, but not regretful. "Sometimes," she said, "the truth costs relationships. But living a lie costs your soul." Christmas came. Sarah and I spent it with Marcus and a few other friends. We cooked dinner together, exchanged small gifts, watched old movies. It was simple, perfect. No drama, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Just people who genuinely cared about each other choosing to spend time together. A year ago, I had been standing in an airport, my face stinging from a slap, my heart breaking as I canceled those tickets. I had felt alone, humiliated, unsure if I was doing the right thing. Now, I stood on a beach with a woman I loved, surrounded by chosen family who saw me and valued me. Financially whole. emotionally healing. Sarah asked me what I was thinking about. I told her about the airport, about that moment when everything broke open. That slap, I said, was the beginning of my freedom. It forced me to see what I had been refusing to see for 32 years. She nodded. Sometimes the most painful moments become the most important ones. Not because of the pain, but because of what we choose to do with it. I thought about that. About choice. About agency. About the difference between reacting and responding. I had spent my whole life reacting to my family's manipulation, trying to earn love that was always just out of reach. The airport was the first time I responded from a place of self-respect. We walked back to the resort as the sun climbed higher. I checked my phone. A notification. Amanda had sent me a message. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. No explanation, no context. Just an apology. I showed Sarah. She asked what I was going to do. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to respond, to open a dialogue, to see if Amanda was genuinely changing. But I also knew that 2 words didn't erase years of harm. Apologies without changed behavior are just words. I put my phone away. Maybe someday, I told Sarah. But not today. I'm not responsible for her healing timeline. I'm only responsible for mine. Sarah smiled and kissed me. We spent the rest of the day swimming, reading, being present. As I sat on the beach that afternoon, I reflected on everything I had learned. I used to think family meant accepting whatever treatment came my way. I thought love meant sacrifice without limit, forgiveness without accountability. I thought being a good son and brother meant making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. That day in the airport, when Amanda hit me and my parents took her side, something broke open inside me. Not just my heart, but my understanding of what I deserved. I learned that you cannot force people to value you, no matter how much you give or how hard you try. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who diminish you. I learned that real family doesn't keep score, but they also don't keep you small. They don't steal from you and call it sharing. They don't manipulate you and call it love. They don't hit you and call it justified. The family I have now, the one I chose, sees me clearly. Patricia with her fierce loyalty. David with his quiet support. Helen with her brave honesty. Jennifer with her brilliant advocacy. Marcus with his unwavering friendship. Sarah with her patient love. They are my real family now. And being seen, truly seen and valued for who I am rather than what I can provide, is worth more than a lifetime of conditional approval from people who only valued what I could give them. I paid $15,000 for a trip to Hawaii to celebrate family. What I got instead was my freedom. And that, I realized as I watched the waves roll in, was priceless. The sun was setting now, painting the ocean in shades of orange and purple. Sarah sat beside me, her hand in mine. My phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer sharing a funny meme about setting boundaries. I smiled and responded, then put the phone away. I thought about the scholarship fund, about the students it would help. I thought about Matthew finding his voice. I thought about the extended family members who were learning to question narratives instead of accepting them. I thought about Amanda's 2-word apology and wondered if she would do the work to back it up. But mostly, I thought about myself. About the quiet strength my grandmother had seen in me. About the journey from that airport gate to this beach. About learning that I was worth fighting for, even when the fight was against the people who were supposed to love me most. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about now?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm thinking about how far I've come," I said, "and how much further I still want to go. But this time, I'm going in the right direction." She kissed my cheek. "Yes," she whispered, "you are." The airport slap had been the catalyst, but the real journey was everything that came after. Learning to see clearly, learning to stand firm, learning to choose peace over approval, learning that love without respect isn't really love at all. As we walked back to the resort, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had learned to carry it differently. Not as a burden of shame, but as a badge of survival. I had been tested, and I had not broken. I had been stolen from, and I had fought back. I had been manipulated, and I had found the truth. And in finding the truth, I had found myself. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Have you ever stood up to people you loved and faced the consequences? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience might just help someone else who is struggling with the same choice. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps others who need to hear this message find it. And if you haven't already, Subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding the courage to choose themselves. Share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need permission to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from situations that diminish us. Sometimes we need to know we are not alone in making hard choices. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you are worth fighting for, that your truth matters, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to be seen and valued for exactly who you are. May you find the courage to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to recognize manipulation, and the peace that comes from choosing relationships that honor your worth. May you build a family, whether by blood or by choice, that sees you clearly and loves you fully. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.